talked a lot of Eagles in the first part of the show. We talked some baseball in the second half of the show. We'll go back to the football now. Jimmy Kempski, PhillyVoice.com. Each week at this time, we take a look at all the things happening. And obviously, with the Eagles and Giants, a lot going on. But really today, Chip Kelly coming out, and he was asked about USC, and he gave an interesting, about a minute answer regarding it. And he basically, came out and said, look, I get it. I know your obligations, but it's not happening. Did he clear the air enough? Jimmy Kempski, PhillyVoice.com, joins us now with a look at Eagles and Giants and Chip Kelly moving forward. Jimmy, welcome back.
Hey, Mike, I never heard it referred to as the EHT, by the way.
The EHT location, Egg Harbor Township. That's where we are. Yes.
Right, I understand. Yep, I get it.
Oh, it is very South Jersey referenced. Yes.
I did not know that was that it was known as that. My parents live in Long Beach Island, so I'm familiar with the area. I never heard of it called the EHT, so I learned something today.
Yes, we are in the EHT location as opposed to the Atlantic City location down here. Two spots. Right. We are in EHT. But so Chip comes out today. He said, the North Texas Armadillos, which is obviously a fictional movie with Kathy Ireland kicking, who probably he could bring in for a tryout. You never know now
right.
with that connection there. But he comes out and basically says, you can ask me about every team in the nation. Did he clear the air enough today to make – and now I know you've said before you don't think he wants to go back to college, that he likes the NFL. So did he address it enough for you to say, no, he's coming back and there is no validation to any college rumors?
Yeah, I don't think he needed to in the first place. What concrete information or evidence has there ever been that he's had interest in going back to college? There have been colleges that fired coaches, and his name's been brought up as speculation. And certainly a college like USC could have interest. Who knows? I can certainly understand why they would. He was an extremely successful college coach at Oregon. Oregon happens to reside in the same conference as USC in the Pac-12 there, and USC saw Oregon dominate that conference for the period of time that Chip Kelly was there. So of course they would have interest if a guy like Chip Kelly were available, but he's not. He's coaching the Eagles, and again, there's never been anything concrete whatsoever that would indicate that he wants to go back to college in any way. And I think he actually did today, sort of kind of stamp that out to an extent that was more than necessary. He's the coach of the Eagles, and just because he came from college doesn't really make him, in my opinion, a prime candidate to go back. We saw Nick Saban go back, and we saw Bobby Petrino go back. Those guys failed at the NFL level. He hasn't failed at the NFL level yet. He was 10-6 his first 2 years. They're 5 games deep into this season. They're 2-3, and they have as good a chance as anyone else in the NFC East to win that division. So I just don't get it. I really just don't get why his name comes up every single time a major college program fires their coach. Well,
really, Jim, and a caller brought this up the other day, and I got to use this example. It's akin to Bill Cowher and John Gruden's name that gets attached to every NFL opening for the last 10 years, and it hasn't happened.
Right, and they've been out of the game so long, and their name still does surface anytime it comes up. And again, those guys have never really given any indication that they want to come back or anything like that. Maybe a little bit with Gruden, although I'm not totally up on that situation. So, I can't really comment too much on those two guys. But every time Texas or USC, it doesn't matter. Any time a college program fires their coach, Chip Kelly's going there, and it's completely baseless. I just don't understand why it keeps happening.
Yeah, and for his name to be connected to Maryland because they have Under Armour dollars, he's not going to Maryland. Right. That program's a joke. All right, now let me ask you this then. The one way, and I agree with you, I think he likes the NFL. I think he wants to stay here. I think going back there is an admittance of failure, and he doesn't strike me as that kind of guy who wants to have his tail wagging. However, if the Bradford thing does not work out, could that be his way to say, look, I just can't get my quarterback in this game, and if you can't get a quarterback in this game, I can't be the guy I want to be, and that would be his exit path?
Ugh, I can't see it. That would be just, again, that'd be worse, really, than failing. Failing in terms of having a bad record. You can't find a. He's not only the coach now; he's the GM. So that would almost be kind of in a minutes of failure if he can't find a GM or a quarterback as the GM, because he's both now. So, I get it where it's really, really difficult to find a quote unquote franchise quarterback, and you're not going to win a Super Bowl unless you have either a franchise quarterback or some kind of historic defense that kind of takes it out of the quarterback's hands. I don't have either, although their defense has been really good this year. But yeah, I mean, I can't see him leaving for that purpose. And who knows? I mean, he may even like Bradford still. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but certainly we kind of see how the rest of the season goes. So I can't see him leaving because he doesn't have a great top 10 kind of quarterback at this level. I think the challenge would be to go out and find one, and I'd be surprised if he didn't think he could do that.
Yeah. All right, Jimmy Kempski, PhillyVoice.com. There's many other theories on Chip, and I agree with you, though. I don't think that he wants to go back. I think this is the challenge that he wants to try to get to. The challenge we just mentioned is quarterback. If I was to say that Jimmy Kempski right now in Week 5, is Sam Bradford the starting quarterback next year of this football team, what would you think?
Oh, man, that's a tough question.
These are not good reactions. No. These sound bad. No, you say no.
No, I say no.
Wow. Yeah, so what's the that's the problem though. Okay, it's no, but what's the alternative? I mean, that would be his 6th different quarterback starting in going into his 4th year. I mean, what's the alternative if this doesn't work out?
Yeah, who knows? and by the way, I say no with absolutely zero conviction whatsoever. So don't go crazy with that. But I mean, what do you pay him? What do you have to pay him to keep him? And I think that's a huge factor.
Do you franchise him and give him another year?
I don't think you can franchise him. I don't think you can pay him $20 million over a year or whatever it's going to cost on the franchise tag. I just don't see that. You can't pay that guy $20 million. You can't pay that guy $20 million. I mean, I can't see that. And I can't see them committing to some kind of long-term contract that they can't get out of easily. I mean, maybe if you get some kind of like Andy Dalton deal or Colin Kaepernick type deal that kind of gives them a way out, which their deals are essentially a succession of one-year contracts that they can get out of at any point. Maybe if something like that. And then if you're Sam Bradford, do you think that maybe you can get something else on the open market? It's not just the Eagles that have quarterback problems. There's 15 teams across the NFL that are going to be looking for quarterbacks, and Sam Bradford is one of those guys that for whatever reason these guys just look back to when he was coming out of college and how major how great a prospect he was coming out of Oklahoma with the accuracy and the good arm and the smarts and everything that he had coming out of college. He was a no-brainer number 1 overall pick when he came out, and there's just so many people around the league that really liked him coming out of college. So some team will fall in love with him and give him a contract to be at the open market. So, again, I don't really. I mean, without knowing, especially how the rest of the season's going to play out, it's really a tough question to answer at this point.
And there's always the thought. Well, he was hurt and he was coming off not playing. So if he comes here, now that will be the 2nd year back. But how much, I was listening to our midday show on my drive in here, and Rich is saying, look, he's played 5 games. The rusty part, that excuse is over. I'm done giving him the excuse for that. Is it fair to say? Is that fair? Is that fair to say that we shouldn't be saying that? Look, the rust is still there. I mean, is that something that you still say? He still looks like he's not back from that 2-year absence.
Yeah, there's just been so many throws that he's made that have been terrible. I mean, like the interception that he threw in the end zone. The second one wasn't awful. I mean, the guy made a diving pick. It was a bad throw. That was a bad throw. The guy made a diving pick. Not a good throw. But the first one was completely inexcusable, where he had a perfectly clean pocket. There's nobody around him whatsoever in terms of a pass rush. And you had Riley Cooper wide open, and just for whatever reason, I can't understand how it happened. I mean, that's a routine throw for a high school quarterback. Easy throw to Cooper, just left it way short. Guy picks it off, touchback, going the other way, and he's made a lot of those throws this year. Like, I think I've said this on your show already. During the preseason against Green Bay, they like to run that little corner route to Matthews coming out of the slot, and he hit those perfectly twice. I mean, perfect ball placement, high into the outside, use Matthews' height to his advantage, perfect ball placement. In the Dallas game, they run that. It's either the first or second throw of the game for him. Matthews, again, runs that corner out, is open, and Bradford's just way short. The defender turns around, and it hits him in the feet. Like, it wasn't even a good pass to the defender who was trailing Matthews. It hit him in the feet when he turned around. So, I mean, just the abnormal number of bad throws that he's made, it's been a bad sign. He was better week 5, obviously, against what is an absolutely horrific Saints defense. I think we'll get a better gauge if he's really getting better or not when they play the Giants here. But I've been pretty disappointed with the way he's played so far.
Me too. And I say I've been disappointed, but then I go back to the fact that, man, there's a lot of ancillary things, so I think it's hard to make a definitive judgment on him after 5. But you're right. So we opened up the show by saying, though, Jimmy, and let's see if you agree. Like, to me, it still doesn't make me change my mind on why they made the move. They made the move for the right reasons. The move might not work out, but they made the move for the right reasons. Do you look at it as a failure, though, if Bradford doesn't work out?
I get it. They did not see Nick Foles as quote unquote the guy, so they traded him into and draft position in 2015 draft for Bradford. And you can argue about whether that the price to acquire him was too high. I believe it was. But you're right. I mean, I think they knew that Nick Foles wasn't going to lead them to a Super Bowl, which of course is the ultimate goal. They thought that maybe Bradford is a guy who can kind of get back to, like I mentioned earlier, what he was as a prospect coming out of college. And, maybe just with the Rams, he didn't have good skill position players around him, didn't have a good offensive line in front of him. Maybe with better players around him in the Eagles system and Chip Kelly's offense, that he would be able to thrive here. So I get what their mindset was in bringing him in. And, they always point to Drew Brees, where Drew Brees had a shoulder that was completely torn apart. He came back from that, and he points to the Dolphins in that scenario, where the Dolphins had a chance to sign him, but he failed their medical, and they passed on him, and the New Orleans Saints signed him, and they wound up winning a Super Bowl with Drew Brees. So that was kind of their mindset, and let's take a chance on this guy. So I get it. Like I'm on board with their philosophy there, but I do think so far it has failed. But again, it's only week 5, and you never know what can happen. Like a guy can, just now I figure, bang, all of a sudden you can just it can click for a guy, and all of a sudden he starts playing well, and they get on a roll, and maybe he winds up being what they hoped he would be. But so far we haven't seen it.
Let me ask you this then, Jimmy Kempski, PhillyVoice.com. See, my rationale earlier was I think as this season goes on, Kelly's going to have more trust in Bradford and allow him to do more things, make more throws, that he wasn't going to let Foles do. He was going to he'll be able to take more chances than I think Kelly was going to allow Foles to take. What are you seeing from Sam that is indicating that he is evolving into a better player, or are you not seeing enough from him to say, well, I don't see any evidence as to why they would give him more responsibility?
Well, he took almost no shots down the field whatsoever through the first 3 weeks of the season, and my numbers are maybe off here, but I want to say he threw 9 passes more than 20 yards down the field through the first 3 games, and they were all incomplete. And then against the Redskins, they actually hit on a few deep balls to Riley Cooper and to Miles Austin, and they had they were both touchdowns, and they hit on I want to say Aguilar was that game, although that may have been week 5, I can't remember. But he's taken more shots and hit on more shots down the field. So yeah, I do think that they have let him sort of rip it down the field a little bit more, although Chip Kelly would say that the first 3 teams that they faced defensed them in a way where they weren't allowing them to be beat over the top, where they were kind of limited to short and intermediate throws, whereas the Redskins sort of defending them a little bit differently, and that was more open. But I think that Redskins game where he did take some shots down the field was encouraging to see, because they just hadn't done it, and he really had no success with it whenever they did. So that was the first glimpse that he can do it. You just got to see it more consistently.
Jimmy Kempski with us, Eagles and the Giants. This would be a game where you would think, Jimmy, not a lot of pass rush from the Giants. Mukamara banged up. They're not great in the secondary to begin with. This would be a game that you would think they lean on Sam a little bit more. And, hey, Sam, let's see what you can do down the field a little bit more this week.
Yeah, I would agree. Their pass rush stinks. I mean, you look at week. Every football fan everywhere saw week one. Saw them play the Dallas Cowboys week one, and they just could not. And let's not put that on the Dallas offensive line, where everyone says the Dallas offensive line is the best thing ever. Dallas offensive line last season was a tremendous run blocking unit. They were not a stellar pass protection unit, and the Giants just could not get a whiff of Tony Romo in that first game. I haven't watched all the Giants games closely just yet. I'll probably get to that at some point tomorrow morning. But from what I've seen, they have zero pass rush. And another thing that they did, and this is going back to last year. Last year they gave up 4.9 yards per carry in the run game. That was dead last in the NFL. This year they come around. They have a new defensive coordinator in Steve Spagnuolo. So far this year, it's 3.5 yards per carry, which is actually tied with the Eagles and another team or two for best in the NFL. And the reason why is because they're just dedicating more guys to the line of scrimmage. They made it a priority to shut down the run. But then again, you're paying Peter to rob. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're pulling all those guys up to the line of scrimmage. You're going to get and what's happening is they're a little bit thin on the back end, and they've been torched a little bit in the secondary. They're giving up more than 300 yards per game through the air, which is worst in the NFL. They have the worst pass defense in the NFL in terms of yardage. So, yeah, I think this is a game where if Spagnuolo and the Giants want to continue to try to shut down the run game, which a lot of teams have done so far to the Eagles this year, then they're going to be exposed on the back end, or they're going to be thin on the back end, and it would be sort of ripe for the Eagles to attack that.
Jimmy, let's look at defense real fast. What do you envision the scenario being when Kendricks and Alonso and Hicks and Ryans are all active on the 46 that day on a Sunday? How does that work?
I have no idea. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
I have no idea what they're going to do, because Jordan Hicks has been awesome. I mean, in like 3.5 games, I think he's got like 27 tackles. He's got a sack. He's got a forced fumble. He's got an interception. He's got 3 fumble recoveries, which leads the NFL. He knocked out Tony Romo for half the season. So he's the reason the Eagles are still alive in the division, because he knocked out Tony Romo for it. So, he's just been so good as a third-round pick. And a lot of people, when he got picked, they're like, what are they doing? I mean, they already have Kendricks and Ryans, and they just traded for Kiko Alonso. Does that mean Michael Kendricks is gone now? And then Kendricks gets the big contract extension? And it turns out that having a bunch of inside linebackers that are good isn't the worst thing in the world, because the Eagles obviously lost Alonso and Kendricks, and last year had that happen, they'd be starting Casey Matthews right now. So they're really fortunate that he was available when they drafted him. They saw drafting Jordan Hicks in the 3rd round as a steal. People kind of rolled their eyes at that, but it turns out that he was, and he's just really been good. For my money, I think he's probably worthy of starting. I think that he and Kendricks should be the starters going forward. Both of those guys are both 3-down linebackers. I think you do find a role for D'Amico Ryans on obvious rundown, and then I think you maybe find a role for Kiko Alonso in obvious passing downs. But I'd be really hesitant to take Jordan Hicks off the field, because
we were talking about this the other day, Jimmy, on Tuesday's show about the abundance of linebackers that they have. But realistically, we were debating on whether or not this team would actually be a better 4-3 defensive look.
Tricky. I mean, because what do you have there? Then you have Benny Logan and Fletcher Cox as your defensive tackles, and I guess you have, I don't know, Barwin's a real good fit at defensive end in a 4-3. Graham certainly could be. That's where I thought he was drafted to be when he came out of college. And yeah, I mean, you can plug in any of those three, and you can plug in any of the three inside linebackers wherever you want along the line. I would imagine that you probably want Hicks or Ryans in the middle, Kendricks and Alonso as the outside backers. So yeah, I mean, I think actually a lot of these guys are pretty scheme versatile. Curry would certainly be a better fit, I think, in a 4-3 as a defensive end. But I think what Fletcher Cox and Benny Logan give you in that 3-4 look, they've just been so good, both as two gapping, defensive linemen where they want to eat up blocks and kind of control the gap on each side of the blocker, and kind of allow the linebackers behind them to make plays. They've done a great job of that. But not only that, they've actually made plays in their own right, which is difficult to do when you're a two-gapping defensive lineman. And they've just been awesome this year. So I'd be a little hesitant to kind of mess with that. Those two guys have been really just clearly Fletcher Cox is an all-pro kind of player. And if he's not first-team all-pro this year, there's something wrong. And I think Benny Logan has played to a level where he should be in a Pro Bowl, at least for the first 5 games of the season. I actually think that the 3-4 is really working for them right now. It hasn't really kind of translated to a high number of sacks, but they've gotten pressure on quarterbacks, and they force them into bad throws. They have a lot of interceptions. They do have a ton of forced fumbles. I don't really know how much that has to do with scheme. But I don't know that I'd mess around with it. I think when Billy Davis and Chip Kelly first got here, their personnel was certainly far more suited to a 4-3 than it is now. But they've kind of gone a long way to find players that fit the 3-4 as opposed to the 4-3. So there's no way that they're changing at this point.
Well, Jimmy, of course, we've got Jordan Hicks and the Eagles forcing a lot of turnovers. That has been a key in both of their wins, the 4 against the Jets, the 4 against the Saints. We'll see if they can get Eli Manning, who has done it in the past, but he's been pretty good at it this year. That game on Monday night here on 97.3. More on the Eagles from Jimmy Kempski at Jimmy Kempski and PhillyVoice.com. He's got all the Eagles coverage